So thanks for joining me. I appreciate you showing up. I know you got busy lives and families and lots of other fun stuff to do. And you know, on your own time, focusing on telecoms might not be what is the most interesting thing for you. Sorry. So we woke up, it's 6 degrees here this morning. I'm in the American Midwest, Central Time, and it was 6 degrees C this morning. So I got my flannel shirt on. I went out for a walk, and it's windy and cold. So you can feel winter is coming on here in the Northern Hemisphere. Let's see. So today I wanted to talk to you about a function I'll bet most of you have never heard of. It's inside Excel. It's the get pivot data function. And it is really, I'm going to show it to you. It is really one of the most fabulous functions for automating your dashboards and reports and so many things you do. Let's see. Did I say hello to Asim? Hi, Joyjeet. Thanks for joining us. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I got two screens, so forgive me if I'm not looking right at the camera. I'll have my Excel right here in front of me, so that'll probably be best. It makes it look like I'm actually talking to you. I apologize for that. But then I got another screen behind here, and I can see some of the stats. This makes it easier for me to see your chat messages. Sometimes when I share my screen into Excel, I can't see if you've left a chat message, and if you have a question, I might miss it. So this setup allows me to see your chat messages, and I can try to respond to them as they come up. All righty, let's see. I'm going to toggle back over to my notes. In fact, I should do that. Put that up so I can read my notes without toggling. Oh, sure. There we go. So I'm going to start. Standard disclaimer about Microsoft Excel. We're telecom pros, and I never met one of you, me included, that really likes Excel very much. But it's kind of a necessary evil. There are so many things that we use Excel for to do telecoms. And that's really the point, is we only use Excel to help us do telecoms, to help us do better telecoms. And that's what this broadcast, every Sunday, I'm kind of focusing on Excel right now, because it's just such a fundamental basic tool for telecoms that it really helps if you have a pretty good proficiency with it. Caveat, I'm not going to try and make you an expert. I'm no expert, but there's a few things that you can do with Excel that will really help your telecoms a lot. And that's what I'm all about. I just want to do better telecoms. And if using Excel better helps me do that, that's a big win. So it doesn't really matter. The Cafe Tele audience, most of you are certainly, you're in telecom technology, but it doesn't matter. Are you doing RF? You know, you're using Excel to do a link budget, or maybe a busy hour report, or maybe every morning you dump some stats out of your OSS and to look at your sites or your cluster. So that, RF engineers use Excel all the time. Or maybe if you're in the core, you're evaluating, I don't know what you're evaluating in the core, some of your links, or maybe your licensing, your capacity licenses with your vendor. Or if you're a transport engineer, maybe you're doing some capacity utilization analysis, or you've got a dashboard like that. Or if you're in networking, maybe you're using Cacti. You're collecting a bunch of usage data from a bunch of routers and switches and hubs, and you're sucking that in with Cacti, and you're displaying that in a report. I've done that. That's really cool. But I get confused between, the actual implementation and, the really telecoms that we're trying to do. So the point here is it doesn't really matter what you do with telecoms. Excel is a really handy tool, and that's why we're talking about it today. So last week, the overarching objective that I have is for the reports that we create all the time, reports and dashboards, they should be as automated as possible. And when I say automated, I mean a two-step process to update any dashboard or report. The first step, it really doesn't matter how you do it. You always have to do this first step, and that is bring in the latest data. And, I can think of at least 4 ways that you do that to bring in the latest data, or the update data, the new data. The first way is you just type it. You type in whatever it is. I don't know, maybe you read it off a piece of paper or something. I hate that kind, but that's one of the ways. Second way, see, that's first. The second way is you might copy something else. Maybe you generate some kind of flat file, or you've got a shell script that generates a structured file, and you copy that and then paste it directly into Excel. So the third way would be you might just import a file like that. Maybe you can import a CSV. So that's type it, copy paste it, import it. And then the fourth way I can think of is if you have like a structured query or an SQL or something that grabs the data and somehow, I've never actually worked with that, but I've heard of it, somehow magically it's inside your workbook. So any of those four ways, you may know other ways, but that's the step one, is to get the data inside your workbook. And then for me, with a properly automated workbook, the second step is refresh all your pivot tables, and that's one command. You can just, select refresh all, and you're done. If we set this up properly, the first step is bring in the new data. And honestly, it doesn't matter how you do that or what your report looks like. You always have to do that. There's no point in having a dashboard or workbook if you're not bringing in new data. So that's step one. And then for me, step two is just refresh the pivot tables, and that's it. So in that context, last week I showed you how you could automate all the titles and labels so that you don't, for many of you, I've worked with literally hundreds of engineers. I've been in mobile telecoms for more than 30 years now. I've worked with so many of you, and most of you, you do that first step, you bring in the new data, but then you have to update a date over here, or maybe you have to extend a range, or you need to change something here, or no, that's not right. What we're going to do is we're going to structure the whole workbook so all that is done and it all happens automatically. And if you don't believe me, stick around today, next week, keep attending these, and by the time we're done, and it's probably, I don't know, only 3 or 4 more weeks, I'll bet I could do it I think I could name that tune in less than 10 notes. I mean, 10 of these sessions, and that'll cover all the high points. So last week was automating the labels and titles, which is not difficult, but it's just another step. I think the week before that we did, automating the dates. So the dates were, almost every dashboard is based on time. What happened in the last, 7 days or 5 weeks or 3 months or, a monthly dashboard. There's all kinds of reports and dashboards that we do that are recurring. That's what we're doing is every week or month or day, we have to do this. And the easier it is to do that, the more time we're going to save. Plus, some of these things, if it takes you a long time now, if it could be automated so that it takes you, 20 seconds, you'd probably do it more often. And that's better data. If you can do it in near real time because it's so easy, that's a big win. Okay, so that's a really long-winded introduction. I'm not trying to make you an Excel expert, but if you can do these things, this will make you a much better telecom expert because you're just learning how to use one of the most important, most fundamental tools, and that's Excel. So please don't confuse me with somebody who likes Excel or an Excel expert. I'm neither of those things, but by doing better, by using Excel better, we're going to do better telecoms. Super. Okay, so let's walk through I'm going to go ahead and screen share now and walk you through my my dashboard. Let's see, screen share. There we go. And I think, I got a screen share. One problem with Excel and this platform, this webinar platform that we're using to go live is if you're in Excel, here we go. If you're in Excel and Excel pops up a dialog box, if I'm just sharing the Excel application, the dialog box is a new window in that application, but this platform won't show it. I'd have to toggle over to that window. So I'll just share my whole screen, and that way, when I pop up a dialog box, like I'm going to use a shortcut. Here's the format dialog box, just a command 1. And this, there's a date or different numbers. alignment. That's just Command 1. So you can see that. Can y'all see that? Go back here. Did y'all see that when I pop up this dialog box, the format cells dialog box? Can you see that? You should, because it's on screen. Anyway, I'm going to assume you can see that. Somebody say, yeah, I can see it. So this is the same workbook I've been using for the last several weeks. And here's the first worksheet I started with. And this is just the raw data. So that first step of any dashboard, this is where each month you would put in the new data. And you can see this is data. It doesn't matter what this data is, but this is manually entered data. Every month somebody comes in here. Every month somebody comes in here and enters this data. This data comes from a service provider invoice. It physically comes in an email or in the post, I guess. But this data, it's 5 data points. The date, this is when the invoice was dated, and this is just a category. Whether it doesn't matter. Here's the minutes of use, and here is the total, the absolute cost for this entry. So you have 5 data points, and for each month right now, there's 3 rows of data. So that's how this dashboard works. So that's the first one. That's just the raw data. And then config, I have a config worksheet in almost every workbook I do, every dashboard, every report, because here's where stuff goes that it's just configuration data. The whole workbook will use it, and it just gives me a consistent place so I don't have to go looking for it. I know where it's going to be. It'll be on my config worksheet. And what we do with this one is here we find the latest data the latest date embedded in the data. So you can see that's the max function, and it's just looking at column C of this data. So here's column C. So it's just looking for the latest date from this column. And that's really the key, just to identify, okay, make sure your raw data, you have a date associated with it, which is pretty easy, right? Because we're always doing time-based reporting. Make sure there's a date embedded in the data, and this will work. So you get the latest date there. And then here, this is how you automatically determine what are the previous time increments. So in the case of this report, it's a monthly dashboard. So I predetermine, based upon the actual data, this calculates what are the previous, this month and the previous 11 months. And that's what I covered last week. And then, sorry, that was 2 weeks ago. And then last week, we focused on how to automate the titles and labels. And I went through it step by step here. I should say, if you sign up for the notification, I'll send you an email every Saturday before we do this broadcast, and it also allows you to download the workbook from the previous week. I'll also send that email just after this broadcast, so that again you'll have the dashboard that I used. You'll have this data right here. And what I did here is I just stepped through everything that you need to know to be able to automate your titles and labels. I'm going through them really fast here. I'm not expecting you to look at it, but if you want, sign up for that. And in addition to the notice when we're going to go live again, you'll be able to download my workbook each week. And I included in this automating the chart title. So you can see here, the chart title is just on this worksheet, the chart worksheet, cell B24, which is right here. So there's the formula in cell B24 that generates the title for this chart, And because it's completely automated, anytime I update, anytime I bring in the new data for this monthly report, and then I refresh my pivot tables, the title of this chart will update. And I should say, as an aside, my dashboards, let me show you here's the basic dashboard that I'm starting with. This is the dashboard I use. And make it a little bigger. This is a long distance. That doesn't matter. The same techniques are going to work here. It's just numbers, really. But I include in it 5 separate charts. And I always put the date, the latest date, in the title of each chart, because it happens every month. that somebody says, hey, could you send me the latest, could you send me the latest cost per MOU chart? And so by having that date already automatically included in the data, in the title of that chart, I can just copy it and paste it into an email, or I can print it out. We're not supposed to do that anymore. We're killing the planet, but I don't have to do it. When somebody asks for that, it's very little work to do. I simply copy it and paste it, send the email or take a screenshot or whatever. It's really, really easy because the current data is already there. So that's a tip for your own dashboards and reports, whatever techniques you're using to create them. Go ahead and include a date so that it makes it easy to share. If you're doing a good job, somebody will want the charts and graphs that you're making in your dashboards. Okay, so anyway, this is just that overall, and you'll recognize this format because I like this because it really satisfies a very diverse audience. This is again that monthly report, so it has the last 12 months and all the numbers for the last 12 months. And then these charts are just based on these numbers. Really, this chart here, if you check if I click on it, you'll see it highlights, it's supposed to highlight, it highlights the ILD cost per MOU. Here's going to be this chart, going to be this column here, this one, because it's DLD, cost per MOU. So there you can see it's highlighted. So really these charts are easy because they always look at that data. Because these dates are automated, they will change and the data will change, but the charts always look right there at that specific range of cells. So again, it's really automated. That's the point. Remember, two-step process. Two-step process. Bring in the new data and then refresh the pivot tables. So that's going to get back to today. And I've added 2 worksheets for today. And basically, I just copied from that previous dashboard. I copied this formatting. And then this is a link to my config. You can see here, config C14. And that's the current month. That's the latest date in there right now. Okay, all clear? I'm seeing your chat, Joyjeet. With MS Teams, that has the same problem that you can't, if it pops up a new window, is that what you're saying there? If it pops up like a dialog box, it doesn't appear inside if you share the application window, you really have to share your whole screen. I think that's what you mean. Tell me if that's not what you had in mind. So anyway, I've added the new dashboard page because we'll use this later, and I didn't want to have to add it during the broadcast. Right. Okay. Thanks, Joyjeet. Yeah, I've only used MS Teams a little bit. I think we're going to be using it more and more because a lot of corporations, a lot of companies are getting on board. Microsoft makes that really easy to do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a pivot table. And I assume you guys have worked with a pivot table, so it wasn't my plan to go into detail how to create a pivot table, but it's really simple. We're going to do, I think to make it really simple, I'm going to select the data first. So now I've selected all my data and I'm going to come to the pivot table and do insert, click pivot table, rats. Okay, so I got to come back here. Let me select it and copy it. So now I can copy it and then pivot table, insert a pivot table. So, all right. Normally I use named ranges because that's a really simple way, but I didn't, but that's not what I wanted to show you today. So I haven't created the named range yet. So let's come here and I'm going to have to manually go there. Okay. Now my range it's just the data I have today. This is, I'm only trying to show you the pivot table related function. So this is not a very good practice, but it'll work for what we're trying to do. I think I'll show you why this isn't a good practice as we go through this. When I bring in the new data, if I use this technique, I have to manually change this range. That's why I use named ranges, because I can set up the named range so they'll automatically adjust with the new data. But that's probably next week or the week after. Okay, so now I've got my pivot table, And what I want, yeah, I should have done a little more work here. Well, here's what we're going to see. There's the date of the invoice, which is here. Yuck. And then I wanted, let's say over here, I'm going to have MOU and cost. So this is a pivot table, but right now you see it's every row. What I really like to do is to group it by month. And because of the raw data, you can see here, I've got 3 dates, well, 2 dates in August, 2 on August 14th and 1 on August 18th. And these are all in the year is 2016. But if I come back here, I got to go to the end of the data. And you see, I've got 2 dates in August of 2016, the 14th and the 18th. So the pivot table does what it's supposed to do. And Excel has the ability with grouping. Where's group selection? I can, oh no. Yeah, okay. Now yeah, see, I never figured out how to do this. So here's the intermediate step. Let me go back. What I like to do is have the month. And I'll do what I call a synthetic field. The synthetic field is I force the date. And that's C2. That's the year, comes from the date in C2, and the month comes from there as well. But I'm going to force it to be the first day of the month. So there's my synthetic field. I always color my formulas so I don't accidentally type over them. So I'm just going to double click, you know, the fill handle here, right? The little knot, the little knuckle there at the lower right-hand corner. Just double click that and it will fill all the way down. And you can see for these 2 dates in February, I get February 1st. And here's March 1st. And here's April 1st, etc. And if I go to the end, these are all on August 1st. So I had 2 separate dates in 3 rows of data, and it's all on August 1st. So now if I come back to my pivot table and I have to change the dates because I added a column. So I need to add, make this B. And once again, to me, that's another limitation of setting your ranges, hard coding a range like this. But again, we're going to go forward with that because it's a simplification for now. So now I've got my month column and I can refresh the pivot table so it'll show up. And there it is. I'm going to undo this and add the month down here. Where's that at? Why did he give me 2 of those? Ah, here. Okay. So now I've got a month and I get 1 entry for every month of the year, which is what I want. So all 3 of those entries for August of 2016, they're 1 row in my pivot table. And that's what I wanted. Does that make sense? I kind of jumbled that because I didn't have the date. This column that I added, I call this a synthetic column. And it's synthetic because it's derived from other data. And you'll use this a lot. For example, let's say you're sucking data out of your OSS. Your OSS probably gives you like a cell ID. Yeah. But human beings, we often want to see the cell name. So you might have a big lookup table that maps the number that's embedded in the OSS data, maps that cell number or cell ID to a name. So that would be a great synthetic field. Is that clear? Okay. So here's the pivot table. And this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted. I want to have a pivot table that, remember my 2-step process. Step 1 was to bring in the new data. Step 2 was refresh my pivot tables. So you can see right now it's got August data. I'm going to get ahead of myself, but I want to illustrate the point. Here on my dashboard, no, my input data. somewhere over here, I've got some. Here's some more data. Come on. Why is that not helping? Did my screen just lock up? No. Interesting. Screen has locked up a little bit here. It might be the screen sharing. I should be able to do that. Yeah, but it goes off screen and nice. That's what I want. Yeah, I think that's something about the screen sharing. I'm sorry about that. How do I get to nope, that's the wrong window. I don't know what to do about that. I can't show you the end of the data. Any suggestions? I think it's the screen sharing. Let me turn off my screen sharing for a minute. That's disappointing. No, it still goes off screen. I'm going to quit my Excel and try it again, see if that will help. I use a Mac, an Apple computer, and Microsoft Office on Apple isn't as good. No, I still got the same problem. That's fun. And it's only that worksheet. This worksheet's fine. Nice. The hell did I do? Well, let's see. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. Let's try unfreeze the panes. Okay, somehow Excel had frozen the panes. All right, I'm going to start sharing again here. Sorry about that. Apparently Excel had frozen the panes, so the whole worksheet was frozen. Go figure. Let me share again and go back to my worksheet, my workbook. Here we go. So I did copy. So now let me paste in that. This is, you can see it's the August data now. If I look in my dashboard, you can see August is the latest month. And that comes from my config. There's August right there. So there's August on my pivot table. If I add this new data, and I'm going to, yeah, okay, there we go. And now I come to my pivot table and do a refresh. I've only got one pivot table, but since I'll always do refresh all, I'm going to do refresh all so you get used to seeing that. And when I refresh, September 1, 2016 will now show up. Super. Oh, no, it won't. Do you know why? You remember why? Because I set the, if I come back here to my pivot table, yeah, it's just Excel. But if I come back here to my pivot table, my data source only goes to row 340. So the data I just add is that I just pasted, it falls outside of my data of the range for my pivot table. So this is why I said it's a bad practice. So there's one way to fix it, and that is just add 3 rows. I could also add 9 rows. I could add 100 rows, right? This is also not good practice, but it'll get us past this for now. So I've extended, and you can see right there. What I need to do, though, is I also need to extend my synthetic field. And if I refresh that, I can do that menu here, but I still get a problem because see the blank rows show up. That's why I use the name ranges, is it avoids these blank rows. And although what I'm showing you today, that doesn't matter. It can get in the way of a really well automated workbook. So often what I do in the input data is in my synthetic column. I think it looks bad to have errors or those, you know, how Excel does, what is it? It looks like this, N/A, or you get these errors. I think it's unprofessional to have those in your data if you could have anticipated them. So generally in my synthetic fields, I'll populate the synthetic fields way past the current data, so that as new data is brought into the workbook, those synthetic fields don't need to be extended each time. But I also don't want to show these errors. So I always wrap the synthetic fields in like if is blank C2 do nothing, otherwise show that date argument. And now when there's no data for that row, this stays blank. And when I come back and refresh my pivot table, the 11/00, that will go away, but the blank doesn't go away. So let me refresh that pivot table. So the 11 went away, but the blanks don't go away. So that's why I use named ranges. I'll try to remember to set that up for next week. But this now has 9/1/16. So in my config, this is now September 1 of 16, and that'll also be in my dashboard right there. Okay, sorry, that's a really long. What am I at? I'm already 30 minutes into this. I'm wasting your time, and I apologize that I'm talking so much. But I hope it's all clear. I want you to be able to use this. So now let's go back to this pivot table. So I've already shown you that as data is added to the input data worksheet, you refresh your pivot table and that new data automatically populates the pivot table, which shows up on the config worksheet for these dates that I automated in the past. And it shows up on the dashboard. This is all what we want. Now I want to put actual data. I want to put the actual data here. So what did I have? MOU. I've got MOU and cost, I think. So let's just put those labels there. Let's do that. And I guess I need to freeze the pane a little bit. View the top row so I can be actually in the current data, but still see where the heck I'm at. So I've got some of MOU, some of cost. All right, so now what we're going to do is I want to be able to, in my dashboard for September of 2016, I want that value, the MOU value, I want that value to appear. That value right there should appear in my dashboard automatically. Okay, well, here's how we do that. I'm going to show you on this worksheet so we don't have to dance around as much, and then we'll do it properly. So the way to do that is Excel gives you a function called get pivot data that pulls data, specific data from a single cell in a pivot table. And the way to find it is the equal sign and click on that cell. So can you see this? Is it large enough for you to see? I don't think I can zoom that. Yeah, see, this part up here doesn't zoom. Well, let me do this. So now you can see there's the get pivot function with the argument. So I'm in the sum of MOU column. That's the first argument. On the worksheet, on this worksheet, cell A1, so that's this pivot table. And the month field is set to a date value, and that's it. So was it 4 arguments? Right. So really it's just, what's the name? The name of the metric, name of the function that, what do I want to say here? Well, for us, it's a KPI. Name of the KPI. These are the arguments to the get pivot data. Then the location of pivot table. And then it's just, you'll see this later. It's just a bunch of attribute value pairs. So the attribute is attribute is month, and the value is 61261211291. So that's all we've got here. Oh, sorry. Oops. Sorry. It's the date. It's the date value. Since it's a month, so I gave you the wrong. This is the date, and this is going to be 9/1/216. That's not really true, because the way Excel stores dates, Excel stores dates as a serial number, the number of days since January 1, 1900. Yeah, I can show you that by just making this a generic. That's the number of days since January 1 of 1900. So that's what this is. The value is this. But then Excel is converting that into a date value, because that's what's in the pivot table. Okay, makes sense? So if you've got your version of Excel, you should try that. Create a pivot table, or open up any place you've already made a pivot table, and find an empty cell close by, click an equal sign, and then click in your pivot table. Okay, there's one thing. There's an option here. Click inside your pivot table. Click in the Pivot Table Analyze menu on the ribbon. This is the ribbon up here with all the icons. And in the Pivot Table Analyze, go over to Options, and the last entry in that menu should say Generate Get Pivot Table Data, and it should be checked. If it's not checked, select it. Because if it's not checked, when you do what I did, enter an equal sign and then click inside the pivot table, I don't know what it does. It doesn't give you the get pivot function. But that's the cool thing, because if I now, just to show you this, I'm in MOU, I'm going to hit an equal sign there, come back to my pivot table and click that. And then there you go. Magic. I know that's the right number of MOU for September, but it's not automated because it has the date hard-coded. Do you see that? All right, here's my date. And you don't want to do that. So how can I get around that? I don't want to hard-code that date. So how can I? Well, I don't want to, I'm not trying to trick you. Here's all the dates. I always want to show the MOU in this column associated with the dates in this column. Well, I know that this MOU is for September of 2016. So why don't I just link to that? I highlight that date. Remember, these are attribute value pairs. The value of this pair is the date function. I'm just going to click. It's already a date function. And it's the same. It's the same. So how about for this one? It's the same. So I'm going to right click on my knuckle and fill down without formatting. Whoa. How cool is that? So each one of these, Excel would say each of these 12 formulas are identical because the only thing that changes is this last argument. And that's just I used fill down, so it's a series. As long as the only thing that is changing is a range and it changes sequentially, Excel thinks those are all the same formula, and that's a best practice. You see how that works? So there is C6, C7, C8. So what this column is displaying is the MOU value associated with the date in this column, which is exactly what we wanted. Is that clear? I'm going to come back to the table and do the same thing here. Remember, here I had the date. That'll change because I'm on the wrong row. To make this simple, I'm in row 89, so I'm going to click that date. That's actually May of 2016. And now I've got cost. Oops, sorry. Do that again to give you MOU. And then since it's all here on the same workbook, I can overwrite that date function with that date. And now 91499 all that. Right? So all I've done here is in my dashboard, I've got that function, and it's going to show me the MOU value for whatever date in these 12 rows of the column C. That's the month. Well, how are we going to do the cost? Hey, we've seen this movie. Doesn't even matter where I click because I'm going to overwrite it. See, that's 303. That's not correct for September. It should be 276538, but it will be because I'm going to overwrite this value with that month. Shazam. Ain't that cool? I just love this. Questions? What do you think? So that's really, I mean, my secrets are revealed. There's the magic. That get pivot data function. If I come back to this other, I didn't open it. That other, the original dashboard. If I show you the actual dashboard, so you can't see it because it's pretty small, but there's the get pivot data function. Same here with MOU. The config function, the config worksheet. Yeah, sure. Is this what you had in mind? So what we did here, the way this worksheet is, what this is doing for us primarily now is this function. It's just a max function for column C of the input data. So here's the input data, column C. Okay. So it's going to get the max, which is the latest month, September of 2016. Config. So that's what this is. This will always show the value of the latest data in your input data. Yeah, that's the dashboard links. So this is C14 on the config worksheet, and then it's all the cells. It's 12 months, right? 12 months. So it's a total of 12. So here's C14, C15. These are those same 12 months from the config worksheet. So, I mean, at a high level, what I've done here is based upon the date of my input data, the latest date is always going to be the highest number, the highest value of the input data for the date column. That's what I've got, max of input data. And then this is what we did last week. So I don't want to go through it all again now. I've already taken 45 minutes. God, I didn't know I could talk that much. So this is all the data. It's just using the date function. Plus it uses it each time it's the date function, and you're going to add one to the month argument. Or it's actually, you're going to subtract one. So that's what this function does. This is actually two fields, two columns that do that, because here's the subtract 1, subtract 2, subtract 3, etc. So you can get all 12 months. And here I'm referencing out to this column E. Here's the same thing with the same formula, this rows formula embedded right in the formula. I prefer this one because it's just a little cleaner to me. The formula is a little more complicated, but come on, it's not that complicated. And I don't need 2 columns on my config worksheet. So, and I've been doing this technique I'm showing you. I've been doing this for more than 10 years, so I'm pretty comfortable with it. For you, this may feel a little less cluttered because I admit this formula is a step up from this formula. Yeah. So if this is what you're more comfortable with, it works exactly the same. It's exactly as automated. So don't worry about that. So that's the basic technique. Let's see, what else do I have to show you? Yeah, Fabrizio, I'll, after we're done today, and I think we're pretty done now, unless you've got other questions, but when this is all done, I'm going to have some breakfast, but then I can download this video. I have to edit it. You know, I'll delete a bunch of the stuff off the front, clean it up a little bit so it's not quite so long, but then I'll upload it to YouTube, and then I'll send out that other email. Go ahead and, let's see, hang on here. I'm going to turn off my screen sharing. There we go. Let's see, what I wanted to give you was, sorry. Like I said, I never learned to go ahead and, if you don't mind, sign up here. If you click there, I'll send you an email every week before I go live and after. The after email, you'll be able to download the latest workbook. So you'll have what we've just been through. It's not very annotated. That's like too much work, but you've just watched it. So the workbook should refresh your memory. And you can always reply to the emails. I'll get back to you. I'm happy to try and help you with this, but this is really key because it helps you. I mean, that's with the labels, automating the labels, and this being able to pick specific data from a pivot table and place it exactly where you want it. Man, that's most of it. Right there, that's most of it. I guess the synthetic fields is another key part, and there's more. What I want to show you next week is the way to automate the range that the pivot table uses as the data source, and that's because as I showed you. Oh, I can show you that again. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to share again here real quickly, just in case you don't believe me. We'll go back to the workbook. Now the latest date is September, and I'll go here on config. There's September. Here's September. So let's go back to the input data, and let's try and avoid messing up Excel this time. So you can see here in October of 12. I'm not going to bother with that. So there's 4 rows of data. I've highlighted. I'm going to come back over here. Okay, 4 rows of data. And here's my pivot table. Well, I can check right away in config. Now it should say October, and it does. My dashboard will say October, and I've got an error. That's something we should touch on really quickly. I told you back here with my input data, I like to wrap my synthetic fields in a test so I don't get those errors. Remember, if I fill this down, no errors, it's just blank, right? Well, I didn't do that here. I haven't done that here because I've got, I think, almost 7 or 8 years worth of data here, so I don't need that anymore. But what you would do here is wrap this function, wrap your get pivot data function in the if error function, which says if the first argument generates an error, show the second argument. So I'm just going to show nothing. 2 quote marks. The first field shows an error, display the second field. That's what the if error, that's how the if error works. So if you don't have, all 12 months worth of data available, I would use the if error function to hide your errors, to hide those ref values. Now, I've got all my data, but I can do it again here because I don't yet have the October data. And again, I hide it. Now, for you, what's more likely is you'll have the latest month because you just started, right? What'll be missing is the older data, right? But I have added it here. It's in my input table. Do you understand why it's not showing up in the pivot table or why it's not showing up in the dashboard? Because I didn't refresh. So there's the evidence that it's a two-step process. Bring in the new data. That was step one. And remember, it doesn't matter how you do that. You can type it, you can copy paste it, you can import a CSV, you can have an automatic link to like an SQL or some query, and there may be others. But that's bringing in the data, step one, and updating the pivot table. So right click and update, refresh, sorry. So there's my October data, right? And my dashboard will now have October data. Now, what we'll talk about next week is, Joyji, what you're showing here. The problem is in my pivot table, I've hard-coded the data source. And I may hard-code it out a bunch, but that solves one problem but creates another one where you end up with these blanks. And when you do this type of historical, this is an aside, but you can't do this with having a hard-coded range. Excel, this will work a lot better if Excel only processes the available data and no blanks. If you have blanks in the data, yes, you can go into your pivot table. You can hide blanks, right-click and where is that? Oh, hide. I think I can hide blanks, but I just haven't done that in so long because I always use this. I use I call it the named range technique, where the data that the pivot table is using is exactly the same as the data that you've got. It's not complicated. It's really easy. You just never got shown it. So I'll show you. It'll take a lot less time than the get pivot data. And that will filter out the blanks because the source data, choose the data that you want to analyze. Change pivot data source, pivot data source. So this source goes from row B1 down to row 400, right? But our data only goes to row 347. So that's what causes these blanks, this blank row and this row that has no data. That's because, and we can fix that by using these named ranges. Also, back to this one, this chart is impossible to do without named ranges because this chart, here's a task for you to try and figure out, because if you can figure it out more simply than using named ranges, I want you to teach me. This chart, this handles, you can see all those little data points, right? That's about 7 or 8 years worth of data. And every time you add a new month of data, this chart will automatically add that data out here on the right. And I think that's impossible to do with Excel without using this. I keep saying named ranges because I hope you've heard of a named range. What I use is a dynamic name range. It changes as the underlying data changes. And it's just, I think it's as cool. I think it's as sexy as the get pivot data function. Yeah, but the filter, you'd have to change the filter each time you add a data. Every time you add a new month of data, I think you'd have to mess with your filter. I don't know if you can show me. If you show me that, and I'm gonna kind of wrap there because we're over an hour. We're an hour into this already. So any more questions? Gosh, thanks a lot for your questions. I appreciate that. I like to know that you're actually interested in getting something out of this. But the trick is, again, our overall objective here with this one and last week and the week before and the next couple of weeks is to have a dashboard or any recurring report that is as automated as possible, and it should conform to this two-step process. Let me turn off my screen sharing. It should conform to this two-step process. Bring in the new data and refresh your pivot table, and that's just done. Joyjeet, if you can, I'll play with the filter. I never did, but I hope that helps you. Like I said, if you have not already got your name on this list, please do, and that way you'll be able to download here. Please go there. Just give me your name and your email. I don't send a lot of emails, don't worry. And if you get tired of me, you can unsubscribe. It's really easy. But then later today, I think it'll be later today, but I want to eat my breakfast first. It's already 11 a.m. here. I'll send you an email, and you'll be able to get the workbook here. Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you joining along. Always be an action taker. Thanks, guys. You take care. Joyjeet and Fabrizio. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.